Today we're going to be going over the Canik Mete, going over our first impressions of this handgun, and doing a quick unboxing, and then wrapping up with some recoil testing we did with this handgun, and conclude our final thoughts on this new handgun. Okay, jumping into this unboxing, have a nice hard case from Canik, and we got a couple little things here. Some brushes, a cleaning swab. Oh, this looks like a pin device, help you punch out some pins, extra back straps, and then a little baby gun that holds some tools and spare bolts, which is really nice. A couple extra spares in there, some bolts and washers in case you lose anything. That's pretty nice. Another thing that's kind of cool is this little baby gun. It's actually a screwdriver. Kind of goofy, but it's kind of nice that they give you this. I don't think I've ever seen another manufacturer give a toolkit like this with some spares. Goes in the bottom there, that's kind of cool. Owner's manual, some miscellaneous stuff taped on the bottom. And then you get to the handgun here. This one comes in the holster. Nice little OWB paddle holster. Definitely cheap, but it is really awesome that they give you this to get you going. Most states you can carry OWB. It is completely legal. I understand why they didn't give an IWB concealed carry holster. That could be an issue with a lot of people not having their proper licensing to carry, and Canik kind of opening that can of worms. So I'm glad they did offer a holster. I did carry this around the shop and it is pretty solid. I will say it is nice that it has clips on here and you don't have to take your belt off and fish it through your belt. The retention is pretty nice as well. It's very tactile. You can draw pretty easy, does not get bound up. Plastic is pretty soft, but it does completely cover your trigger. All in all, a pretty nice holster. We did end up adding a $175 aftermarket barrel on this Mete SFT. This is not the Pro version, so keep that in mind when looking at this. We are a comp company, so we had to have a threaded barrel in there, and at the time we could not find a SFT Pro. They seem to be more available now, which we'll get into later. You also get a mag loader and a spare 15-round magazine. Most guns do come with a mag loader nowadays, but it is nice that they at least give you 2 mags. Last but not least, they do give you some optics plates. They are plastic. I don't know how much that actually matters. I think to some degree it is important that it would be aluminum or steel, but it's nice that they include them. Most manufacturers charge extra for this now, or just don't include them. And we do have a safety lock for the 2 people in the United States that use this. That seems to be everything that is in the packaging. For the price, I'm pleasantly surprised at how much you get from Canik on this. This box is nice enough that I could use this to transport it back and forth to the range. So nice job, Canik. Jumping into the overview of this handgun, we bought it on Gunbroker for $495. Honestly, a very fair price for what you get, including a holster, steel sights, a relatively decent trigger, an optics cut slide, and a Magwell. Pretty impressed with the price on this. You can get the SFT Pro that comes with the silver threaded barrel for $570. For about $80 more, I think that is incredibly fair, as we paid $175 for this threaded barrel. Selfishly, as a comp company, this allows people to get a threaded barrel easier and cheaper, and has a much higher likelihood of people actually using their handgun with a compensator or a suppressor. So it's really nice that Canik offered that at such a low price for this bundle. All the shooting we did on this handgun was in this barrel. We didn't do any shooting with the stock barrel. We did not throw a weapon light, an optic, or a comp on here. All the shooting was just stock with this threaded barrel from Canik. So this Mete SF model with a threaded barrel in there makes it much more similar to the SFT Pro, I believe. So this build right here comes in at 1 pound, 12 ounces. However, honestly, this thread protector and extra material is probably gonna only add about an ounce or 2 of weight. So still a relatively light handgun. It feels appropriate. So it doesn't feel too heavy or too light, which is definitely gonna impact how this gun shoots and the felt recoil of it. So we'll actually dive into those numbers later. We did do some ransom rest testing with this gun, bone stock, with the threaded barrel on there, and I was actually surprised by those numbers. But first, let's go into what this gun offers and how it feels. Starting on the slide serrations in the back are pretty decent, and in the front, they're really nice at the bottom, but the top, they really fade out, and they're almost obsolete. I actually went to do a press check on this and slipped and sliced my finger on the barrel here. Kind of a goofy thing, but typically when you think about doing a press check, you kind of go over the top like this, and pretty much right where the slide serrations fade out is where you grab, so it's really slippery here. I typically do press checks at the range. We have multiple people at the range, multiple people touching handguns, loading guns, so I check guns for safety all the time. So press checks are a nice, easy way to do that. And first time I did it with this gun, I slipped off and cut myself. And pretty much everybody at the range today said the same thing. It was very slippery. So I'd have liked to seen them make those a little bit deeper in the front. However, they are there, so if you want to grab a little bit lower, you can still press check it fine. We do have a loaded chamber indicator and a striker indicator, very similar to the Walther PPS. It does work pretty good. There are very few instances where I feel like I would need either of these safety devices. Like I said, most of the time I do press checks anyway, just because I visually want to make sure something is or is not in the chamber. Don't want to just trust a little safety device. And like I mentioned earlier, this does have an optics cut and a couple plates provided by Canik. While they are plastic, I still think it's awesome that they do offer that. We will be throwing an optic on this once we do an ultimate build with this handgun. We just wanted to get some testing done, as most people would receive it right out of the box. Canik opted to throw steel sights on here, which I can definitely appreciate. They are a simple dovetail style, very similar to a Glock 19, but they are steel, which is really nice, especially since they are just a simple 3-dot sight. They're not my favorite iron sights, but they do serve a purpose, and I was accurate enough with them on the range today. However, I'm excited to throw a red dot on here. Soon we'll be able to see how those optic plates actually work, and if we're just gonna get a CH precision plate or a third-party plate on there that is aluminum. And then later we can talk about if there is any point of impact shift or how this gun handles an optic. And in all of our testing, we have not had any malfunctions with this gun. We have had a prototype comp on there quite a bit. We've tested the universal comp, and again, no malfunctions with this gun. So reliability is definitely there. With this price point, I was a little concerned that we might see some reliability issues, but it ran flawlessly for all the rounds we put on this. I want to say we're probably in the ballpark of 750 to 1,000 rounds on this gun. Haven't really oiled it up, haven't really done much cleaning, and it's been running flawlessly. Moving our way down, we do have a nice rail section here, so it would accept pretty much every single weapon light you could throw on there, which is definitely a must. Looking at the trigger on this thing, I had mixed feelings about this trigger. I really thought I was gonna hate it. The take up is incredibly long, like really, really long, and the length of pull is kind of further back, all the way back in the back of the trigger guard here. But it is a very light and tactile trigger pull. As you can hear there, reset is also nice and tactile. So I was actually able to shoot this gun really fast. Even though the length of pull is pretty bad for me and feels a little shallow, I can still shoot this gun really fast because of the tactileness of the brake and reset. And the length of the trigger pull is just really light. So I actually came out of the range liking it a lot more than I did going into the range. Dry firing this gun, I thought for sure I was gonna hate the trigger, but I like it quite a bit, so I'm kind of pleasantly surprised. One thing I did notice about this trigger was the safety is really tiny, so it's very comfortable. It's not intrusive when you're pulling the trigger. However, that does make me a little concerned of an accidental discharge, holstering or otherwise. But in the resting state, it does not stick off there very far. I feel like it would almost get caught with the trigger if something got stuck in this trigger guard. To me, it makes me a little weary, and it also makes me wonder if that's why they added so much length in the trigger pull and added so much take up. Maybe it was a safety thing. Moving over to the mag release. I really like this mag release a lot. It's very tactile. I like the size of it. The button is knurled and is raised off the frame. It feels like a competition mag release and very premium. Definitely not what I was expecting out of the Canik, and it's definitely punching above its weight class, which seems to be kind of the common trend of this gun in general. Looking at the slide release, this thing is absolutely huge. There was only one time at the range where I accidentally was riding this and I did not get slide lock. Other than that, it was very easy to hit on a reload. It's not sticking super far off the gun so that it is cumbersome. And another note, it is ambidextrous, which is nice for the lefties. Moving our way down the frame, it does have an adjustable back strap. They do give you one extra size here. I actually found this one to be really comfortable, so I did not swap it out. If I had to guess, I'd say this is probably a little bit bigger, but I found that the stock one that came on the gun is just very comfortable. Feels very ergonomic for my hands. And on the SF model, it does come with a Canik Magwell. I think they did a phenomenal job on this. It aesthetically looks phenomenal. It has a really nice funnel, and it appears that it would work with almost any mag extension on the market. One thing that could be controversial is how aggressive this pushes your hand up into the frame. Some people might complain about how much it pushes your hand into the trigger guard. For me, it kind of rides the line of very comfortable, but a little tight. The tightness allows you to control that recoil a little bit more. It feels planted in your hand when you're shooting. But I definitely noticed the tip of this Magwell pushing my hand into the bottom of the trigger guard. After a long day of shooting, this could kind of get uncomfortable. It could put some pressure on your knuckle a little bit and kind of hurt your middle finger. But for me, I think it rides the line pretty much perfectly. Doing reloads with this thing was a breeze. I had no problems doing reloads. This funnel is really huge, and I think for the price, they did a really nice job on this. Also, the fit and finish is just phenomenal. I don't see any issues with the coating. It appears to be anodized, and it does go with the gun really nicely. So now talking about the ergonomics of the Canik Mete, I think they did a pretty nice job here. It feels very comfortable in the hands. Like I said, the Magwell does give me a little bit of a hot spot on the bottom here, but I think if you took this off, you would have no issues with that. The back of the frame curves to my hand really nicely, and honestly, it's probably one of the more comfortable budget handguns I've felt. To me, it feels better than a standard Glock 19. Probably not as good as a P320 for me, but that's because I have a little more room. The 320 we shoot has a 17-round frame, so it's a little bit bigger. To me, it feels like it's in line with the Walther PDP or the Smith & Wesson M&P Compact. Just very comfortable, very ergonomic, and again, for the price, I think they did a phenomenal job on this. As I mentioned in the unboxing, you do get two 15-round magazines. Very fair for this gun. Since this gun has a Magwell, I probably would have liked to seen a mag extended version on the spare mag. Seems to be a common thing that a lot of companies are doing, like the FN509 or some of these SIG P320s. It does come with two 15-round mags, so I can't complain too much. It is nice that they included a second mag. It'd have been nice if they would have axed a couple of these nice features, like the toolkit or the holster, and thrown in a third magazine, as I'll probably actually use that a lot more than I would this holster. But from a business standpoint, Canik coming into a very red ocean with a lot of competition, makes sense why they would offer a holster right off the get. Instead of waiting for holster companies to catch up with a product release, I totally understand why they would come out with that and offer two mags. It's still competing with a lot of competitors who only offer two mags, and offering a really nice holster to get people to start actually using the handgun that they bought. So taking a look at the polymer on the frame here, it does feel a little bit cheap. The polymer doesn't feel as nice as some of the other handguns we've felt in the past. However, one thing I will say is the grip texture is pretty nice. It's mildly aggressive to the point where I don't think it would hurt your skin if you had it up against your belly all day, but it is aggressive enough that it would keep it planted in your hand when you're shooting and fighting some of that recoil. I will say I like the micro aggressive grip texture on these three surfaces, and then the more coarse grip texture on the back, kind of fighting some of that recoil. And that is one thing I noticed when shooting this. It did not feel like it had a lot of recoil when shooting in the hands. It shot relatively soft for a non-comped gun without a weapon light. It was very comfortable. The iron sights returned back on target relatively quickly. And again, I said I feel like I could shoot this gun pretty quick. One thing to keep in mind with our recoil testing is the Canik had 36.8 degrees of muzzle flip, which if you compare that to other stock handguns, the Glock 19 has 35.1, the SIG P320 has 34.7, and the PSA Dagger has 34.7. So when you put it in a rest, it actually has more recoil than those other three handguns. But when shooting this in real life, I really don't feel like that was the case. It felt more comfortable than that. Some of that might have to do with me not shooting a stock gun in quite a long time. Usually we shoot comped handguns. Another part of that might be this Magwell really keeping my hand planted in the frame. That's one thing that the ransom rest just does not take into consideration, is how I personally can shoot this gun and how tight I can hold the gun. The rest takes all the human element out of it. So when you kind of add that back in, I felt like this gun shot really well, even though the numbers don't really show that. This one thing to keep in mind is 1 degree difference in muzzle flip is gonna be negligible. Almost nobody's gonna notice that. You're really not gonna notice how these guns shoot until you actually go out and shoot them on the range. So who is the Canik Mete for? I think it's the person who wants to take a step above the PSA Dagger, but doesn't quite want to jump into a 320 or a Glock. To be honest with you guys, I think the ergonomics are better than a Glock. They're better than a PSA Dagger. Not quite as good as a 320, but for $495, you get a lot with this handgun. A lot of things about this build feel very premium, really except for the plastic used in the frame. To me, this is a really nice starter gun. Someone who wants to put an optic on here or get into compensators, maybe shoot suppressed more frequently with a threaded barrel, and jump into a very budget, competition-ready handgun. I think this does a nice job. Comes with this really nice Magwell, steel iron sights. I really don't have too many complaints about a gun for once. Usually I complain about pretty much everything, but this gun does a pretty nice job. Let me know what you guys think. Drop a comment down below. Are you guys gonna be picking up the Canik Mete, or are you gonna go with the PSA Dagger instead? I think both of these budget options are a good head-to-head fight. And in my opinion, I think this might come out on top. If you guys like this video, we'd appreciate a like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.